Alright, for this week's fly, we're going to go with Kelly Galloup's butt sump. This is a hybrid between the sump, which we did a couple of weeks back, and the butt monkey. Very realistic looking sculpin pattern. It comes in at about 2.5 to 3 inches overall length on this one, but like I said, very realistic. It's a very good pattern to fish. I like this one a lot in shallow water. Still with a sinking line, but I mean you can dead drift this one as well if you want. But we're going to go ahead and get right into this one. Hopefully the buttons aren't going to be a distraction here. We'll see. I got them uncovered, so they should be alright. But like I said, we're going to go ahead and get started on this one. Get zoomed in just slightly more. There, I like that a little bit better. To start on this, same as always with these patterns, we're just going to do a Marabou tail. And run this just shy of the length of the hook. We're actually going to keep this one a little bit shorter. Run your Marabou back. You can absolutely get away with doing just one stack on this one. I like doing the two, so I'm still going to. This is a 3x long size 6 streamer hook, by the way. I think it's a 710 Dai-Riki. We're going to move this up to the front just to help with some bulk and taper. One thing that I should have said on this one is where you start your thread, which I didn't, I'm just used to doing these. Start your thread right where you want your wool head to start. So right there, now I know not to let any material go past that. Should have touched on that at the beginning, but I didn't. I apologize. So now I'm just going to take a single strand of gold Flashabou, double it over, and run this back. I'm going to run it a little bit longer than the tail. Get that tied in on my side. Flip this over, bring it to the camera side. And measure and cut. There we go. We got some flash coming out the back now. I'm going to take a second plume of Marabou. Get that tied in. Trim that out, tie this in. Let that one down just a little so it's easier to work with. And there's our tail. Now we're going to run 2 lateral accents on this. After we get this taper in. Come on. Work with me here. There we go. There's our. Now for these lateral accents, like I was saying, we're just going to pick. This is just olive dyed Grizzly. We're going to take 2 strands of this, try and find something, a little bit on the thicker side. This is actually a lot better Hackle than I would like to use. I'd like to use the real junk webby stuff, but running pretty low on that at the moment, so we're just going to tie this in. I'm not going to worry too much about trimming this up and getting this exactly how I want it. I'm just going to go ahead and tie these in, fibers and all. There we go. And I'm going to take this back right to where I left off with my tail. I have more than enough wraps on there to get these to stay sturdy. Like I said, normally I would strip these off and I would tie in just the stem, double it over and everything. I'm not going to do that with this one. like I said, I'm tying in mainly, well, I'm tying everything in, and then I'm just working it all the way up to the front. I haven't had any fallout on me to this point, so it saves a little bit of time on this pattern doing it that way, and it gives you the same result. So same thing, work this to the front. We're not going to go the entire way to the front because we're not building a ton of bulk here. We're not building any bulk really other than our thread wraps. And trim this off. It's a huge waste tying with a good feather like that, but like I said, I'm running low on the junk, so I had to use it. Now, I'm going to take this back, same thing, right where I left off with my last one, right where I left off with my tail, that's where I'm going to tie that in. That's going to be our lateral lines going on the back. And then I'm going to take some yellow or gold, whatever color this is, looks like a pale yellow. I'm going to take this wire, this Brassie size, I'm going to tie this in, double it over as always. I'm going to run this almost the length of the workable body section. Double this back over. Get that tied in and secure. Then we're going to take some olive Estaz. If I can get this to uncoil here. This is a little bit thicker than I like it. I'd like to have the crystal Estaz for a fly as small as this, but I think I'm going to be able to get away with just the regular Estaz. Or the crystal chenille, that's the stuff that I would rather be using here, but this will work. So go ahead and peel back the cotton to where all you're tying in are those two strands that the materials are twisted into. Half hitch. And we'll work this right to the front, so we'll get 2 good wraps. Pull tight. And then just start working your way to the front. 3, stop, 1, 2, 1 more. Let me get one more wrap in there, and you'll see when I peel all of these fibers back, I'm going to be just shy of where I left off with my initial wraps. I mean, I may have 1/8 of an inch there to work with, but everything looks good. Get that tied in. Work that on the way back. Now, next up on this one, we're going to tie in our hackle. For the hackle on this, I'm using this barred saddle from MFC. This stuff is really cool. I like working with this stuff. It's almost a mix between, that one's all twisted, I'm not going to use that one, but it's almost a mix between Sculpin and just regular saddle. I really like the way this stuff works. I mean, it's easy to tie with. It's kind of like the intermediate length fibers, so it works really good on these smaller bugs. You know, some of the saddle that you get is really short. Some of the Sculpin that you get is really long. This is kind of that intermediate length, and you know, it's all artificially dyed and everything, but the barring on it's really accurate, and I kind of like it. I like working with this stuff. It saves me from sorting through a bunch of junk material and trying to find the right fiber. These are all fairly consistent, so I tend to use these a lot. Where are you at here? Let's grab the Hackle pliers. I don't really need them. It's a longer feather, but I'm going to use it. Grab the Hackle pliers and then just work this right back. Oh, wanting to twist on me. There we go. There, kind of flowing backwards for us, and then we're just, as always, just going to counter wrap this thing, come right through your fibers, and end right there. There we go. Trim off our excess wire, trim off our tag end on the hackle, and just kind of work with these feathers a little bit. Everything looks pretty good. They're sitting about how I want them. Now, we're going to tie in an overwing here, and we're going to use this. This is just the Grizzly Marabou, the Sculpin olive color. I went through and picked two of these out that I kind of liked. The first one is a little bit more slender, a little bit thinner as well. The next one that you'll see we tie in is going to be a little more broad. This one's just going to act more so as a prop or a filler for the better feather that's going to go over top of this. Sometimes when you tie just one of them in, they get kind of sparse and just kind of look lost, honestly. So this one I'm going to tie in a little bit longer, and it should cover this up really nicely. Should go about a quarter to a half of the way, well, we'll say a quarter of the way back the Marabou tail. We'll go ahead and get this tied in, get these two secured, and then trim off our tag ends. That one's actually sitting pretty good. That looks alright. Yep, so there's our, like I said, we're going about a quarter away back our Marabou tail on this one, and then the last thing we're going to do is just tie in a wool head. This one's going to be pretty quick. We're not working around dumbbell eyes or anything like that, so it's going to be pretty straightforward. Let me get this, comb it out. This isn't the best wool that I've ever worked with, but we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So we'll get a clump of that off, get everything cleaned up through our comb here. Like a dang rat's nest there. It was pretty messy. Trim this off, and then I want to lay this back right over top here. I'm still going to have the Grizzly Marabou there. I'm going to lay that wool back, get one good wrap around there, two, tighten it down, and then I'm going to move this wool in front of me. And I'm just going to tie right in front of this, kind of cinching things up a little bit. And I got a couple of hairs going rogue on, or a couple of fibers going rogue on my thread. Hopefully it lets me get to the end of this fly before I gotta doctor it up. Same thing with this. I mean, this is going to be the same process over and over until we get to the front. I think I'm going to get probably four sections tied in here on this wool, and we're just going to work with this until we get it to look how we want it to. So, and get this tied in, work that forward a little bit, and I'm going to tie in three more. How I'm going to do this is a little bit different than I do when I'm tying with the lead eyes in there. It's going to be a little bit different, but I'll explain as I go. So same thing, we're getting this cleaned up, getting all the waves and everything out of there as much as we can, cutting off the excess that we're not going to need. And then I'm going to take this clump right here, and I'm just going to open this up, have like a little cylinder right there, or a nice circular indent. And I'm going to throw this all over the top. It's going to cover the hook 360 degrees. Give one wrap, two, secure it, and then I'm going to flip this stuff over top. And all this really does is it pushes the first two materials back slightly, and it covers it up so you're not going to have any huge gaps. Shouldn't have any gaps really if I did this right, but I've been known to mess up from time to time. I'm going to go ahead and comb through this again, and I want to find the best working material possible. Some of this stuff is so wavy, it's just going to be a nightmare to deal with. Like, you can see some of the waves and everything in there. I just can't comb them out, and they wind up making a big bump in here when you tie them in. They won't wrap secure. Well, they'll wrap securely to the hook, but they make a big bump, and it's really tough to get the material to not cover completely, if that makes any sense here. It's tough to get it to not cover completely how it's supposed to. So we're going to get that wrap right there in the front. And I'm going to do one more on the bottom. One more on the bottom. Oh boy, some of that stuff's just pure garbage. Pure garbage. I'm not going to work with that stuff on the bottom. There we go. Ooh. It's about time for new scissors. Now, same thing. I'm just going to double this over. I'm going to butt this up right underneath. Loose wrap, loose wrap. The last two are tight. And then I'm going to go ahead and whip finish. Looking good. Looking good. I'm going to grab the bodkin. Just give this a quick tease to everything right here. Have everything looking pretty good, easy to work with. Some of that wavy stuff's in the back there. I don't really like it, but it should be fine. Find the front of your hook and then just make a cut right up in front of that. That gives you a nice reference point. What? These scissors are just about done. I'm going to work on the bottom side here first. I'm going to pull some of this stuff up, and I'm just going to make one flush cut right there. Now, just like the typical Sculpin patterns, to where they have that nice flat underside on the head, that's what we're after here. So I know you can't really pick this up too well, but there is a nice flat portion on that bottom. And then I'm just going to start trimming out my overall shape on this. So nice and rounded on the top, and then a broad head on this. It's going to have a pretty broad head. Just like Boogeyman or the Butt Monkey or any of those that are imitating Sculpins. We're going to follow the same thing. Like I said, we're going to follow the same overall profile. The only difference on this one is like I said, there's not lead eyes. So it's a little bit easier to work with, or a little bit easier to control your gaps, I should say. A little bit easier to control your gaps. Now we're going to let this section right here that looks like pectoral fins, we're going to let those stay in there, but that, as you can look at, I mean, the head on that is just way too bulky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out of the vise and I'm going to trim from behind it, coming with the material. And it's so much easier to get your profile this way. Trim this out. Same thing. And then it allows you to get that nice, almost like a wedge in the head. I mean, to where the front is nice and slender, and then it just kind of wedges out from the center, or from the beginning. Gives you the nice profile, nice sculpin profile that you're after. Come down here and trim that nice and flat. I still spend too much time on these. I've learned years ago that once they hit the water that they're never going to look the same way that they do right off the vise, but I still like taking some time and making them look good for some reason. And especially because that one's going to wind up getting its picture taken. It's going to need to look a little better even. So, just gonna, like I said, this wool isn't the best to work with. I mean, it's a little more difficult than it should have been, but it still wound up looking pretty good. But there you have it. Especially once this thing gets in the water, it's going to really give you that sculpin profile that you're after. But there is Kelly Galloup's butt sump. If you guys have any questions or comments on this one, as always, leave them with me. I'm going to trim this one up just a little bit more before I take the final picture of it. But questions or comments, leave them with me and I'll get back to you. But thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next week.